Ask a scientist, and you'll hear numbers that break the mind. The Earth, about 4.5 billion years old. The cosmos itself, older still, by far. Timescales so vast that a human life, 80 years, 90, vanishes inside them like a single spark. We think of these enormous numbers as a modern achievement, the product of telescopes, radioactive dating, deep physics, knowledge we only earned in the last century or so. But here's what almost no one tells you. Thousands of years ago, long before any of that, an ancient Indian text wrote down a number for how long a single day of the Creator lasts. That number was 4.32 billion years. And modern science, measuring the age of the Earth with instruments those authors could never have dreamed of, came back with almost exactly the same scale. Let's look at this carefully, because this is where it gets strange. First, what the texts actually say. And we have to be precise, because the system is astonishing in its detail. In Hindu cosmology, time is not a straight line. It is a wheel, turning through immense cycles of creation and destruction. The texts lay out a structure with almost mathematical precision. The smallest of the great units is the Mahayuga, 4.32 million years, made of 4 ages that decline in virtue, one after another. Gather 1,000 of these Mahayugas together, and you get a single Kalpa. A Kalpa is 4.32 billion years, and a Kalpa, the texts say, is just one day in the life of Brahma, the Creator. When that day ends, a night of equal length falls, another 4.32 billion years, during which the universe dissolves into rest, before being created again at the next dawn. Day after cosmic day. Creation, dissolution, creation again. And it scales even higher. 100 years of Brahma, the full lifespan of a universe, works out to over 300 trillion years. These aren't vague poetic gestures. They are specific, structured numbers, written down in the Puranas and the Bhagavata, thousands of years ago. Now, here's the resonance that stops you cold. Modern science says the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. The texts say a single day of the Creator is 4.32 billion years. Different methods, different millennia, and the same order of magnitude, the same staggering scale. And the shape of the idea echoes too. Hindu cosmology describes a universe that is born, expands, dissolves, and is reborn endlessly. And one of the live ideas in modern cosmology is exactly that. A universe that may cycle, expanding and contracting, a big bounce, rather than a single one-way beginning. A cyclic cosmos. Deep time measured in billions, both written in the texts, both circled back to by science. Now, pause. This is where the honesty has to come in, because it would be so easy to say, see, the ancient sages knew the age of the Earth. They had science before science. The Vedas contained modern physics all along. That would get clicks. It would also be false. The authors of these texts were not measuring anything. They had no telescopes, no radioactive dating, no way to weigh a planet's age. These numbers came from a metaphysical vision, a spiritual, symbolic framework for imagining time on a divine scale. Scripture and science here come from completely different foundations. One is contemplation, the other is measurement. So the texts did not calculate the age of the Earth. Let's be clear about that. What's remarkable is something subtler and honestly more interesting. While almost every other ancient culture imagined a young world, thousands of years old, a recent creation, the thinkers of ancient India reached instead for billions, for cycles within cycles, for a cosmos so old and so vast that it dwarfs a human lifetime into nothing. They were comfortable with deep time, comfortable with billions, with endless repetition, with a universe far older than any human story. At a moment in history when that idea existed almost nowhere else on Earth. And then, thousands of years later, science walked into that same cathedral of time and found the scale was right. So, did the ancient texts know the age of the universe? The honest answer is the one that gives you chills. No, not as measurement, not as physics. But they imagined time on a scale that turned out to match the real one. They guessed big when everyone else guessed small. And the universe, when we finally learned to read it, agreed about the size of the room. Maybe that's coincidence. Maybe a civilization that meditated on eternity was simply unafraid of large numbers. But it's a strange thing to find a 4 billion year day written down by people who could only have arrived